In this course, I'm going to begin sharing with you all the ins and outs, the thoughts, the mindsets, the processes of how to create a high-performing culture within your organization. This may be part of a bigger organizational plan, or you can certainly apply all the things that you learn in this course to just your work group or your team itself. Let's get into what a culture is. So culture is something that is talked about a lot in today's world of employers. And here is my best definition of what culture is and what it isn't. So culture is the behavior that results when a group operates within a certain set of generally unspoken or unwritten rules. In essence, it's how we do things around here. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking you can legislate or create a culture by rules or policies or procedures. That can be part of a culture. Accountability and defined processes can absolutely be a very valuable part of a culture. However, it cannot be demanded. It's something that's created. It's a little intangible, but I'm going to give you some steps to where this will make a lot more sense. Most importantly, the value to you as a manager and to your organization, if in fact you begin the steps and the processes of creating this culture, this high-performing culture. Because in essence, it's just how your workplace, how your company shares the values and the practices, how we treat each other, how we treat our customers, what we stand for, how we do business with integrity or our standards of which we operate, hold each other accountable. It's around us all the time. It's an invisible cloud that's around us all the time. And in great organizations, it drives very positive outcomes. I'll give you a little bit of background. I worked for over a decade for a Fortune 100 best places to work. And if you're not familiar with that designation, it's the penultimate of designation for the best companies on the planet for employees to work for. Now, we worked very hard at it because we were a big company, always growing and looking for new employees in an industry that frankly wasn't real attractive to a lot of people. But for the entire time I was with that organization, in fact, almost for the entire organization's existence, they've been a Fortune 100 best places to work. And that allows us the advertising to attract people. But once they got there, it allowed us to hang on to people for a very long time. We had very, very, very low turnover rates because we operated under a culture that was very employee-centric, very customer-centric. And we processed our thoughts, our ideas, our approaches, things all around a mission of being able to take care of our customers, take care of our employees, they'll take care of our customers, and everything else will take care of itself. Which, yeah, that's a nice statement, but we really lived it. And we were the only business in our industry, we were the only company in our industry that ever had that designation. And it set us apart. And they're still today one of the most successful organizations in that industry. I can tell you, I've worked for this Fortune 100 company, and most of the other companies I worked for were not Fortune 100 best places to work. They did not have that designation, nor did they deploy the approach to culture or employee experience the way my previous employer did. It's a different world, and it was amazing. People loved working there. Once they came in, they looked around and said, hey, we're just kind of all alike. We look different, but we all do things very similarly. We all have the same mindset. Yes, we were able to create that as an organization. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of maintenance. It didn't just happen overnight. And if you commit yourself to improving that in your company, understand it takes time. It's a long process. That's built brick by brick. But once you've got it, it's a game changer. And here's the final point on all that. High levels of engagement in the workplace not only create stickiness with the employees you have, attract new employees to your organization, but it also improves productivity within your company. There's a sense of pride of accomplishment and contribution that takes place in high performance cultures. That is amazing. It's the set apart to success. Statistically, companies that have a highly engaged workforce, within companies, the most engaged teams culturally outperform their peers or their competitors by over 600%. So it's worth the effort. It is worth the effort. It's an amazing thing when you get there, but again, it takes a lot of work and effort to achieve. So here's some other key points I want to share with you. Your culture underlies everything, including your work motivation, the morale of the organization, creativity, and success. To grow an organization in order to meet its maximum potential, results-driven managers, if you really want to be a maximum results contributor from your team to your organization, you'll begin taking the steps to create this high-performance organizational culture. Because this engagement is a game changer for your team, for you as a manager, and the entire organization, your customers, your vendors, etc. So we're going to examine the 3 best practices that support the development, the creation of a high performance culture. So it's not unusual to find that your culture, what you have today, is not your desired culture. You know it can be better, but once you start examining it, it's probably not what you want it to be. Not unusual. In fact, the vast majority of companies don't have the culture that they desire. In fact, back to the Fortune 100 example, Fortune 100 best places to work, 30,000 plus companies every year put in an application with all the documentation in order for the Fortune 100 Institute to choose the best 100 companies, 30,000 companies, because they know what a game changer it is. But only 100 are chosen. So it is a very select group. Also, when you look at engagement and how to measure it, we're going to get into all that. That's going to be a key measure for you to understand how you're advancing toward your goals of improved performance culture. We're going to look at the 3 things that you need to do to create and sustain a high performing culture. So first of all, let's talk about culture. It can be referred to as the glue that keeps an organization together. It's the silent code of conduct that we all abide by. It's about how we get things done rather than what gets done. It's how we approach things, how we do things around here. And when a new employee gets brought in and introduced to this high performance culture, they pick right up on it and they love it. It's very contagious. Conversely, new employees coming into a non-productive or a dysfunctional culture, they're going to pick up on that too. One's way better than the other, obviously. So culture is not a thing, it's an environment. It's something an organization is. The challenge for you as a leader is to recognize that it exists and what exists, and then begin molding how you and your peers approach doing business. The one thing you want to make sure you're avoiding is creating a dysfunctional culture. And if you have a dysfunctional culture, many companies do, certainly not by design, they just don't know any better. Now you're getting the tools as a manager, as a contributor to your organization, of how you can create a more functional culture within your organization, what it is, and how to do it. It just happens. And when it's a strong one, it's amazing. If it's not so strong, it's a huge liability and holds you back. It creates a ton of frustration. Emotional energy drains where it doesn't need to be. So I'm going to start with making a quick statement on you got to assess where you're at. And there's multiple ways to do that. We're going to get into a little more detail, but getting an assessment, a cultural assessment, a current state assessment on what your culture is, where you stand today, is essential. I'm going to talk about different approaches to it, but you can, once you get that assessment, once you go through the steps of revealing your soul, of where you're really at versus where you want to be, and maybe are fooling yourself where you're at, you'll know where to begin. And you'll also be able to identify the starting points. You start at your lowest common denominator and start working up from there. And generally, as you start working up the areas where you're weakest at, other things tend to start tacking on and coming up with it. So here are the 3 steps. Here's the 3 steps. Identify your current culture. That's an assessment. Identify what you want your culture to be. And we're going to talk about creating a culture statement. And then the steps to begin moving everybody towards what you've designed, created, and committed to your culture becoming. Again, this takes a while. It takes a lot of effort. But when you put the effort into it and you create that mindset, amazing things come. So let's talk about identifying your current culture. How do I do that? So you need to get feedback. You need your employees to tell you, based on a set of criteria, what their true thoughts, ideas, and feelings are of how things are currently within the workplace. You can take different approaches to this, but you can start with just meeting as a group and asking some questions. If you have a fairly open, honest relationship with people who are willing to share their true thoughts or opinions, it's a great place to start. Or you can assemble a group of some of the leaders within your workforce that you know will not hold back and share their true opinions on things. Start there. They'll tell you how it is. And I'm also give you the questions that you need to be asking to determine what your culture is and what it isn't. But as you're meeting with these groups, just ask for their thoughts, ask for their opinions, especially what's bad, what are we not doing well, and what could be better. Don't worry too much at this point on how to get better. Let's just find out where we're at. Find out what is not working so well culturally in the opinions of your employees. Now, the next step in that is you need to go out and manage by walking around with your eyes and ears tuned in, your observations tuned in, with a different focus. You're going to hone your focus to be looking for, how do your employees act? What do they do? You need to start looking for common behaviors, common problems, things that are visible to you. Start identifying and noticing emotions. These emotions can be indicators of the values of your organization and how people are feeling valued themselves. And if they get upset over certain things, well, that may be a part of your culture that you need to address. But if there's parts of the organization, how you do business, that are important to you, and your employees aren't treating it with the same level of importance, that chasm, that gap It's something you need to notice and be aware of. You may understand that from your conversations with key employees, but you've got to start peeling back the onion, ripping that Band-Aid off. It's going to be painful. You're going to get feedback you don't necessarily enjoy getting, but that's how you're going to get better. That's how you're going to get better. You got to identify where the pain and the opportunities are. Another place to maybe key in on your observations and ears is what do your customers say and what do your vendors say? You know, if you've got vendors that believe that you are the best company in the world to do business with, you pay your bills on time, they love doing business with you, then that's great feedback. Conversely, if you're late communicating with them, if you're late getting them the information they need, or you're a pain in the tushy to do business with, are they constantly complaining about doing business with you? Would they rather find somebody else to do business with? Listen to them. Listen to your customers. Look at your customer surveys, your customer retention, your if you've got Yelp reviews, if you've got and I encourage every organization to regularly be sending out surveys to their customers as to their customer delight, their net promoter score. Would they recommend you to a friend or a family member as a company to do business with? That's called the ultimate question, which you determine the net promoter score for. What percentage of your customers would recommend you? That's the ultimate measure of your performance with your customers. But how many customer complaints you have? Do your employees, as you're listening and watching things, complain about your customers? Are they constantly complaining about what a pain in the neck customers are? That's telling you what your culture is. If they'd rather avoid customers than deal with customers, or if they're constantly dealing with the emotions of customer complaints and issues, well, there you go. There's an indicator. What's creating all that? What culturally is creating that? Do you have a culture of continuous improvement, of constantly looking at what you can get better at? Look at how your employees are communicating at work. What's the tone of their messages? How do they interact? How much gossiping and infighting and pushback and ignoring each other? Do you have people with a lot of outbursts? Do your employees treat each other pleasantly or with hostility? Now, there's going to be outliers to all that. But if you've got people who've been around for a while that tend to respond hostile to either customers or to their peers or other people in the organization, and you've tolerated that, well, that's part of your culture. That's the one that exists today. As you tolerate that, you allow that. How often are your people communicating with each other? Are they constantly feeding off of each other, relying on each other, collaborating with each other, or do they work in silence? Are there a bunch of silos out there in your organization, people working completely independent of each other? You can notice that pretty quickly if you're looking at it. What are your employees not discussing? What are you not hearing from your employees? Should they be discussing something that's really important to the organization? Or is the only thing they're discussing is what they don't like about working for your organization? That's going to be a good indicator of your current culture. But if they're talking about the company's goals and mission and how the company's doing, they're displaying some kind of pride or interest in how the company's performing, well, that's a great example of a positive culture. But if they never ask, well, there's something wrong there. There's something wrong with your current culture, and that's because they need to be bought in. They need to be aligned with the company's success, because they're creating the company's success. And if they don't care about the company's success, how likely are you to be getting the most out of them in driving that success? What is wrong in your current culture or approach that's creating that missing key element to your culture? Are you not sharing goals? Are you not sharing achievements, recognition? Do you just not talk about how the company's doing? Well, there you go. There's a really great first step in improving your culture and gaining that buy-in and interest from your team about the company's success. So as you're identifying your current state employee by interviewing your current employee base, and you start putting together the adjectives, the descriptors of your existing culture. Hey, that's a great place to be able to observe how they're interacting with each other. And that'll be a really key indicator of your current culture. So, but there's a bunch of questions you could be asking. Observe these patterns. So, ask a question like, who's the hero around here? Who do you look up to? Who's the best manager in the building? Who's the best employee on your team? If they kind of look at each other uncomfortably and they're not even thinking about that, it's like, why are they asking this question? Good indicator around culture, right? That you're not talking about successes enough, that you're not recognizing people in a way that's public enough for people to know. Success breeds success. And if we're never talking about success, you don't get the benefit. You don't get the benefit of that transforming other people's thoughts. So you can sit down and have these interviews, open, frank. It may be a little uncomfortable for you. Certainly it's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of employees. Or you can have an anonymous, either written or online survey. Google Docs has a great survey system. SurveyMonkey has an employee assessment, engagement assessment that's available to them, or available to you as a tool. You can pay companies to come in and set that up for you. There's a zero cost way, there's a low cost way, there's a very expensive way that's determined by how much value you want to put into improving this. So you choose the path that makes the most sense for your organization. I'm not telling you one way is better than the other, but they've got to know that if whatever assessment they're giving feedback on is anonymous, they cannot fear that there's going to be any punitive damage done to them. No punitive measures can be taken because they responded about you or about the organization in a way that was negative. Let's get it out of them. Let's hear it. You need to embrace that. We just need to know what they think. Because in the absence of that knowledge, you're just fooling yourself as to how well your company's doing culturally. You got to just face the pain of getting that feedback. Or you may be way better off than you ever thought. They may be giving you a lot of positive feedback, which is what I hope that you hear. Likely you're going to get a blend of both. You do things really well, and you do things in ways that leave a bit of opportunity for improvement. But you don't get better with the status quo. You only get better if you're willing to make the commitment to create some change. So in the course, in the downloadable document, is the exercise, which is identify your current culture. This is just kind of a casual first glance based on your observations, thoughts, and current opinions of where you're at right now. So start doing your observations, start asking a few key employees what they think about the culture. Start documenting that, understand where you're at so that you can start building improvements from there. That's your first piece of work that you need to do done if you're truly committed to improving your culture. In our next video, we're going to help you with the steps to creating what you the way to determine what you want your culture to be. It's really interesting. I'm going to give you some great tools with that.